come and judge it. Also, one of the criteria on one of the rules, stipulations on the judging sheet is integrating your crops. So we try to promote integration of various crops so that you can add to the natural. So there are some plants that insects naturally don't like. So you may plant that crop to ward them off so that the other one that they might like would flourish. So that's another reason we're not choosing and say, okay, do this, do that, because we want the flexibility for all the competitors.
Right. Now, while you may not encourage or suggest the type of crops that people would grow, they have to be short-term crops.
Yes. So, Mr. Williams, what we've done since the competition would have started was we've also had put off from the Department of Agriculture one backyard garden workshop, because we don't want for persons just to be in the competition for competition's sake. We also want to sensitize them on what Mr. Flanders said and Mrs. Versailles, not telling them exactly what crops to grow, but we want to give them a time frame for certain crops and the best timing to grow these crops as well. So our thing is that we want for persons to know what they're farming, right? So we're putting off different workshops for different periods during the course of the competition and even beyond that, right?
Right. So when does the competition actually start to finish? Because you must have a start date in terms of when people start the backyard garden, and there is a time when you would have to go and visit, have a look at the backyard gardens. I mean, you just don't go one time. I suppose you will pay visits to the various gardens, and at the end of it all, then you would have a competition. So it means then you have the different stages from the time of the person conceptualizing what they want to do, and then you have the planting, and then you have the nurturing of the crops and so on to harvest time or to fruition, if you want to say that. So all of those stages are involved in the judging.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so could you explain?
The competition, as we said, started when we had our initial meeting with Mr. Versailles at the Department of Agriculture. That's when it actually started. From there, we had our outreach in different platforms where we advertise what we're trying to do. And what is interesting about this competition is that we ask persons to have active garden, because we know that what we found out as well is that during the COVID period, a lot of people went into gardening. And what is also interesting is that when persons heard about the competition, they started gardening. And then you have our long haulers who have been in it for decades. So you have a mixture of three types of gardeners in the competition. And again, we wanted it to be active garden, meaning persons are active in their garden doing the work. In the first initial stage, it would have been more hands-off, more for us in terms of technical assistance, giving them advice. And as I alluded to in the second phase would have been when we went in and added treatment. And the third stage now will be the judging. And that would have spanned between, let's say, September, when registration started, until we're in the second stage, which is the application of pesticide and weed control chemicals. And again, depending on the type of plants or vegetable being grown, there are different harvest periods. But we leave that up to the experts. They know what they're looking for. They know how to judge the quality of the plant based on if it would have already flourished in a particular season, and based on the criteria that the judges, when they met, they understand what they're looking for in terms of the health of the plants. And later on, we will discuss in more detail what are the judging criteria based on the three categories that the judges put in place.
Right. Is the judging criteria shared with those who have entered the competition from the beginning? Is it shared with them?
Yes, it is.
So that they can be guided accordingly?
We want transparency. We do not want for the judging to take place. Some person said, well, I did not know that this was involved. So what we've done is not just only visit the farms just to see production. We were also in connection with the farmers as well. So we gave not only sprayed, but I think Mrs. Verses would have spoken about the fertilizers that we would have provided, right? We went around and we asked them, how can we help? What can we do for you? Ministry of Agriculture and Tourism together, we started building that connection, right?
So the support mechanism is in place.
Yes. They became a bit more comfortable with growing what it is that they wanted. And during the whole competition, of course, we realized that the time frame between the 2nd of November to the 28th of February would be quick crops, more or less, right? Things that can be harvested during that period. And persons really became comfortable with relating to Ministry of Agriculture. And I also think that the Ministry of Agriculture had an initiative to give backyard farmers seeds and seedlings at one point. Yes.
Encouraged.
So I think Mr. Flanders could touch on that.
Yeah, like I said, that was a part of the stimulus package last year also, where we did not leave out the backyard farmers. We gave seedlings to them so that they can, everybody was running a little frightened because of the COVID thing. So we made sure to look out for our backyard farmers also. Added to what Mrs. Lewis was saying, this week is a crucial week for the competition because tomorrow and Friday we're actually going out with the help of the Taiwanese, the Taiwanese mission. We are going to be taking some aerial shots with their drones, and that will be a part of the. You get points for that also. So we're going to go out with our communication team, and we're going to take some stills, some aerial shots to get a better idea of how the farms are developing. And also, let's not forget that ornamentals are also a part of this. It's not just vegetables. So some of the ornamentals have been up for quite some time.
Yes.
Oh, so they can decorate with the ornaments,
prune them properly,
pruning and so on.
So that's going to be part of the overall picture when you're looking at it. So the ornaments are part of it too.
Okay.
And in all of this, we're trying as much as possible to encourage economic opportunities,
Right.
We have a lot of florists on the island, and so the ornamentals, right? Persons.
Okay, so you're saying actually that flowers is involved?
Yes.
Yes.
We have two categories
yes.
actually. Both.
Oh, I see. So you have the agricultural component,
which is vegetables.
Right, vegetables, and then you have the beautification component, which has to do with flowers and fruit and so on. Oh, I didn't know that. My mind was just on the agricultural
I think
component.
there was a third category that I think it was scrapped for.
It was the third category would have been landscaping, but we had. During the period of registration, we didn't have anybody come forward for landscaping, so we had to scale it down to vegetable and ornamental entries. And out of those two, we have the 37.
It's interesting. I had someone come and do some landscaping at my yard a few weeks ago, and he said to me, well, you don't really have a yard, I have a small yard. But what is in the yard is really, hedges and, the nice clipped up and just a little grass and so on. He said to me, well, when you're growing flowers, flowers can't eat. You should be growing some, he's actually said you should actually have a backyard garden with vegetables and things like that. But at the very same time, there are two different purposes, of course. One you can eat, and the other is for beautification.
And let's not lose the connection between the two. Because for vegetables to strive and fruits to strive, you need bees for pollination.
Yes.
And so the flowers would enable the pollination of the fruit. So everybody working together.
Right. It's a whole ecosystem.
So
it's a whole ecosystem.
I would have touched on the fact that with making yourself self-sustainable, you're looking at the fact that businesses are coming out of this. In community tourism, you have that initiative of community outreach and building entrepreneurship, whether you're doing it individually or performing clusters. And you could have persons who have these gardens, whether it's vegetable or ornamental, could align themselves with tour operators and have a smaller scale, like a garden to table type dining initiative, or hosting events such as intimate events such as a small wedding. These sorts of things can come out of these type of activities.
Right, Shailene, she has mentioned a very good point. I mean, you're the community tourism officer, and how does this this competition actually enhance community tourism?
But when we started community tourism, to be quite honest, we weren't really sure the direction that we were going in. But I must say that the pandemic is helping us to some extent, because we realize a lot of smaller community businesses have been created. So what we've done was taken the initiative of having a community tourism workshop in November. Right? And we started with trying to merge various businesses together so that we can create that dynamic and authentic experience for persons. So tourism is on a low for now, but there is domestic tourism that everyone can engage in. And so what we've done is, let's take for instance, we've had an art and craft vendor in the community area. We've also had, let's say, a farm, right? And we have tour guides, as she would have stated. And so we take that tour possibly around Bastille, even if it is that we do half of the islands tour, and we go through Bastille, and on your way down to the communities, right, we stop by the art and craft. You stop, there is one package cost, right, that is incurred, and all three vendors or businesses would benefit from it. Stop by the art and craft vendor, and so you not only just stop and look at what he or she made, you also get a package paid for, right? You pay for a package, and so you create something that you will in turn use after. So you would say, oh, I created this, and you take some pride in what you would have created. And so you also start the we call it word of mouth advertising for the experience that you would have received. And so you move along now to the garden. When you move into the garden, you have a herbal tour, or you have a fruit picking tour, and then you experience the farm to table experience. Lovely. We would have had one of that, and I think that would have heightened the interest of persons to want to actually cluster, because we realize that tourism will not survive on its own, but we need something else to blend with it. And we also realize that agriculture and tourism are two productive sectors, and what better thing than to merge the two together? Agro-tourism.
Right.
Understand? So we're encouraging more tourism-related businesses within the area to utilize all the riches, the assets that are in the area, right? And build with other businesses to make one huge dynamic experience.
Right. The agro-tourism, that is pretty interesting.
Yes, it is.
You know, the merging of the agriculture and tourism. What about the encouragement of things like local agro-processors? You know, so for example, what you may have, the local stuff, you can process it.
Yes. We do encourage that. We have an agro-processors unit that is attached to the Ministry of Agriculture, and various other agro-processors cooperatives, right? These cooperatives link with the local farmers, so they basically take things that are on the market not being used and process drinks. We have chips, and they're getting a bit more advanced because they actually have their labeling intact and expiry dates and stuff like that. And with the assistance of agriculture, right, I know that they put on various workshops to ensure that these persons are educated on how best to move along, and with the practices of COVID and stuff like that. So we do encourage, agro-processors as part of the mix as well. As a matter of fact, when we had our launch, we had agro-processors being exhibited there as well, because we wanted to be able to show the linkages, not just you growing, but you may grow and you yourself can become your own agro-processor. So you have hot peppers, and you can create your own sauce. You sell to the market, you sell to the supermarkets, right? Once we encourage that from persons, then we're going to try and cut down the bill of importing vegetables and